All right, everyone, here's a topic I initially said, well, I'm not even going to bother covering it because it's meaningless, but then I thought the meaninglessness of the topic is why I should probably cover it, and that has to do with Ted Cruz, actually, a couple days ago, introducing a term limit amendment, the idea that Congress would have term limits. I believe the idea is to give senators 2 6-year terms, and representatives, they have 2-year terms, they'd get 3 of them. Now, personally, I think that's a little too constraining of the House. The House is a popularity pissing contest. It's really the Senate that needs term limits more than the House. There's a much less rollover in the Senate. They're much older on average. And the idea of the Senate was to be more austere, more noble. Originally, senators weren't even directly elected. They need term limits desperately, especially when the terms are so long. In the House, I'd say like 4 2-year terms would be maybe more appropriate than 3. Give them a little bit longer, because that's equivalent to the length of a 2-term presidency, 2 4-year terms. But that's just splitting hairs. The idea on paper is really good. It's also really popular. If you ask the average American, hey, do you think people in Congress should have term limits? Oh, absolutely. Hey, should the congressperson you like have term limits? Oh, no. I wish they were there forever. I wish that we could abolish aging, too, so they could just be a brain in a jar. That's basically how people act. It's like when Congress has an approval rating of, 10, 20%, some tiny number. You'd think, if people are so pissed off at Congress, and part of it is undeserved, part of it's by the structure of how Congress works, more than any problem inherent within the Congress people themselves. Admittedly so, people need to understand that. These are fallible human beings as well, mostly U.S. citizens, although for some reason sometimes it doesn't seem to matter to people. You've got a situation where despite that low approval, incumbents overwhelmingly get reelected. Well, why? It's because you say, well, I hate Congress, but this guy is okay. And also you get into the dichotomous politics thing where there's 2 names on the ballot. Basically, unfortunately, it's very, very difficult for any independent or third-party candidate to be elected. There are 2 independents right now in the U.S. Congress. One is King, I believe, from Maine, and then Sanders, who's basically just, is too far left to have been a Democrat back in the 80s and 90s, so he decided to be an independent at that time. So he caucuses with them, too. The problem is this. This has been proposed before. It's a perennial sort of thing. Oh, we need term limits in Congress. My goodness, I look around, everyone's old and says Ted or whatever. The problem is it never gets passed, and the way that you bullseye it, you look like you're doing something, and then you table it. The way that you do that is by attaching a bunch of other bullshit that has nothing to do with term limits to it, and you distract people. You bring it up and then you distract people from the same argument so they don't notice the fact that you're never going to hold a vote. Or that you defeat it because, it includes some other provision that my constituents would think was racist or something. And so anyone in Congress can destroy the amendment and save face and just say, well, hey, I thought it was a good idea. All you have to do is have at least one very partisan person from a very partisan district within the House or Senate to stop such a thing from happening. It doesn't matter if it's proposed. That's the problem is, this is a counterpart argument to campaign finance reform, to Citizens United, trying to overturn it. Citizens United, vastly unpopular. It's unpopular among Republicans and Democrats. It was a bad idea. Every person in Congress, if you ask them, would say it was a bad thing. But they're never going to stop it, despite the fact that you have an overwhelming supermajority of people in the United States who oppose Citizens United. No serious effort has ever been made to get rid of Citizens United. Why? Because the people in Congress benefit from Citizens United. They all take that corporate money. They don't want to admit to you on the face, oh yeah, well I'm buddies with all these people. If Citizens United's gone, it kneecaps me. And an independent competitor, someone who doesn't have a party or is from a smaller party, might challenge me for my seat, and I will not be able to stop them because of some scandal, or because my party has problems, or because I'm a Republican in a blue district, I'm a Democrat in a red district. Somebody else can come up from behind, Ross Perot style. That could happen. So they're never going to stop Citizens United. It would require the states probably to get involved at the constitutional level. It would require direct grassroots action that unfortunately people have apparently no balls for at the moment. Activism right now is relatively limited. Like the fervor of activism I saw even online like 10 years ago, a lot of it's dissipated. There are some things people feel passionate about, but even stopping war, it's like they can see pictures of little kids getting gas. They've been so desensitized they don't even care. And as far as term limits, the counterpart to that, think about what you're asking Congress to do. You're asking people with a stable, long-term, often lifetime job that pays a high salary to give that up. to force them to become non-incumbents, at the very least, in order to continue in Congress. Like, you've been in the House for your 3 terms, you'd then have to run for the Senate. If there's no open seat, you have to primary the incumbent, you probably lose, or you have to wait your turn. Maybe you end up 4 years later, 6 years later, you've had to do community organizing or something. Oh my God, I'll have to do a job that, requires me to actually come into work once in a while, unlike in the Senate or in the House, where a lot of people are basically no-shows on any given day unless there's a major piece of legislation to vote on, a major argument to be had, or some other major event that draws them to D.C. like bugs to a lamp, in order to, they go schmooze with the president or something. Oh, the president's having hot dog day. Okay, I guess I'll go to work. I'm not actually going to work, but I'm going to go and eat my hot dog and leave. My fucking $20 rubber frank. That'd be funny. No, I don't expect it to pass, because it's been proposed before. I can remember at least 2 or 3 times in my lifetime it's already been proposed, and I think back during like the latter Bush years it had more legs than it has now. The thing is, it's not a major issue. He proposes this, a couple stories are run about it. Who else is even talking about it? It didn't even trend. Nobody cared at the time. If a bunch of other people within the Senate were to start talking about it, if it becomes a larger bipartisan sort of sponsored piece of legislation, it could happen. There's no reason. If I'm in the Senate and I'm already at my 2nd term or 3rd term or something and I'm basically getting rid of my own job, it wouldn't make any sense. People aren't generally programmed to do that, to be benevolent and to say there's a problem, we can fix it, but I'm going to have to take one for the team. Most people in Congress are the worst among us. They are corrupt individuals. They've become corrupt. Some of them, they go there, they're idealistic at first. I honestly believe this. I believe most people who enter politics start out with sound mind. They start out benevolent. They don't start out, they're not just naturally evil, corrupt, despicable people. They become corrupted. And those that enter as lawyers, like the corporate lawyers, they're probably corrupt to begin with because they have to defend Monsanto or something. Other than that, I think a lot of these people, I would even say this about people I totally disagree with, like Sanders. I think he has his heart in the right place, but he's been corrupted over time. Maybe less so, oddly enough, than many Democrats. It's crazy, but I think he means well. And of course, I've explained before, that can be worse than a person who's corrupt. The corrupt person, they're doing it out of malevolence, out of sheer, bitterness towards mankind or greed or something like that. Person who's convinced that they're doing what's right will fight 1,000 times harder for that wrong means. And so really that's become a problem too. But as far as term limits being introduced for Congress, it's a great idea. It's a great idea just like getting rid of Citizens United. It's a great idea just like an Internet Bill of Rights. Unfortunately, at this particular time, people, the grassroots core of the United States, is so hyper-partisan that if the Republicans propose it, the Democrats will be for it, and vice versa. The fact that Ted Cruz, a relatively religious figure, this is supposedly, within the GOP, basically 2nd place runner-up in the last primaries, has allied with Trump, certainly more than a Rubio or a Flake or something. He's not an ever-Trumper at this point. The fact that he is the one proposing it means if it got legs at all, it would be turned into a partisan issue. Pelosi would come out and say, oh, well, he just wants to get rid of the Democrats because we had a blue wave. He just wants to knock all the Democrats out of the House so that Trump can have a supermajority. Shame on him. It's a ploy. And you watch. Most of the Democrats would actually believe that argument. And if the shoe was on the other foot, let's say Pelosi introduced a piece of legislation like this, do you not think the Republicans would do the same thing? Of course they would, because they want to stop it. They want to keep their jobs because they are lucrative. They make so much money. Being in the Senate or the House, it's not even about the salary. It's about your speaking fees. Hey, I'm a senator. Yeah, I'll come to your wedding. Give me $5,000. Yeah, I'll hold your fundraiser. I'll fundraise for you. I want a cut. I want $500 per plate on this $1,000 a plate meal. I'm going to make $10,000 in a night. Yeah, of course they can. Some of these people, look at how much money Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton commands for a speech. They're not even in active politics at the moment. Yeah, you don't even have to be a high-level politician, at least within your region. Like in Vermont, like Phil Scott, Vermont governor. Most people outside of Vermont don't know who the fuck he is. But if he were to say, yeah, I'll come to your wedding for $1,000 or something, a lot of people here would probably pay for it. They'd probably love that. So you have some private fundraiser. We're going to get Phil Scott to speak. Oh, his speaking fee is $5,000. That's fine. That's fair, because a lot of people show up and give us money because he's there, and it'll be more notoriety for the event. We can charge more because of sitting governors there. It'd be wonderful. Ex-governors, ex-mayors and stuff. They do the same thing all the time. There's a lot of money in politics, and most of it is not on its face campaign finance itself and their salaries. It's way, way larger than that. That's about all. Peace out.